Hi everyone, it's me, Krylios, Team Racing Productions MC and producer. And I am really happy to be here today and especially to have the guest that I have with me today. And our guest today is Amanda Michelle Gomez, writer at Washington City Paper. So welcome, Amanda, to our YouTube Live. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I am doing splendid. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us today. And let me start with, having you introduce yourself a little bit. Tell me about your background, and how you got started at Washington City Paper.
Sure. So I've now been at City Paper for about a year. I have to thank my editor. She's no longer with us, but she's alive. That's great.
Oh,
She's like,
wow.
she's alive. But my editor at the time was Alexa Mills, and she hired me back like over a year ago. She took a chance on me because I'd never covered local DC before.
Hmm.
I've lived in DC for 5 years, but I was doing national coverage. I was
Hmm.
primarily reporting on health policy. And health policy is super local. So, I mean, I reported sometimes on DC and then on neighboring cities. I was doing some reporting in Baltimore. But yeah, I never reported on local DC. So the last year has been a real treat. And now I can't imagine doing anything else.
I love that. I love that. And what are some of the things that you cover on the day-to-day basis? I know especially things now must have shifted towards, very pandemic focused a little bit because that's what we're going through. Tell me what that is like, and give me your perspective from, within the media covering this and, seeing different people going through their different situations, doing, during this, as well as how the city itself is being ran, during all of this.
Yeah, no, it's definitely changed a lot of things. I am the city desk reporter, so I am supposed to be covering DC, which is right. It's like what that means everything,
Yes.
everything sometimes. Um, but like before the pandemic, I was covering I had covered housing, and I was covering like DC's homicides, and now it just like housing crisis and not like homicides and I mean, it just seems that the pandemic has just exacerbated it. I mean, right now I'm
Hmm.
working on a story that I had started reporting on just before the pandemic hit. Like in February, I was meeting with um, some residents who were about to see it's a cooperative slash condo. It's a very strange setup, but they were about to see their fees increase because they had to replace their balconies. And the balconies had to be done a certain way because it's a historic building, and so they have to go through the historic preservation review board, and just like a very complicated mess, right? And these
Yeah.
residents are lower income. One is a janitor actually at Georgetown University Hospital, right? So these are folks of modest means, and I've spoken with this since because the story is actually publishing Thursday. But I've spoken to them since, and some of these same residents who are about to see an increase in their fees. This pandemic has only exacerbated that. One of them was the janitor was let go for a long time during the pandemic. Yeah, she just got hired back 3 months ago. Um,
Wow.
People have seen their wages reduced. So a lot of the things that I was covering prior to the pandemic have only just, the pandemic has just complicated a lot of things.
Mhm.
Same with the homicides, right? I mean, it's just made a lot of people's jobs. I'm thinking of like violence interrupters. It's made their jobs harder. Like they're,
Yeah.
like I remember interviewing one gentleman works at the Alliance of Concerned Men. Um, and he was always going out in the community and interviewing people, always. Like he was, he was in groups of people all the time, and now you're
Yes.
not supposed to be gathering, and it's really made it more difficult for him to do his jobs and to meet and connect with people, who and yeah, and so it's been a very interesting time, for lack of a better word, but
I
it's
can
also
imagine. Yeah, I can imagine. Definitely, definitely. So, now there's an article of yours that I read because, and it stood out to me because I had never known this information before. It's titled, "Will DC ever have a Latinx council member?" And that was on November 17th. That was published in the paper. Tell me about this. I never knew until reading that there has never been a Latinx council member on the DC Council.
And now it came to a surprise to me as well. Like it's strange. Right. So you think about like the Latinx community makes up 11% of the total population
Yeah.
in the city. And interviewing residents about their pick, you know, I think they were surprised. It's like, oh, well, what do you think about like Monica Palacio? I know she wants to make, be the first, not only the first Latina, but she wants to be the first, person who identifies as Latinx to do this and such. And yeah, people were like, oh, a first. Like people are just surprised by this information. Like especially when you think about like neighboring counties who have
Yeah.
right who have who've kind of broken that who've what is it broken that glass ceiling. What is
Montgomery County, Alexandria City, yeah.
exactly. And so it's very strange. I think the only I was trying to look back and like the only I mean Franklin Garcia who actually ran for GC council. I mean he
Hmm.
was one of the few Latinos to be elected to something to local office, right?
Wow.
And he's our shadow senator. Um, and then we had two other individuals who were elected to DC State Board of Education. But besides
Mhm.
that, I mean, we have like three, and I think who the city has elected into some kind of public office. But it's not many.
And what are the reasons? Because it's not like one reason. I know it's like a mix of different reasons. It's not something that one can necessarily pinpoint. But through what you've looked through, do you see a way where let's say by the next election year, that's what 2022, that we could finally see something like that? Or I don't know. What do
Yeah,
you
it's a good question. I mean, that's what I had asked, like, so many people who not only just like political analysis named in this article and not named, right? I just was really interested in learning like what are the barriers to this, and will we ever see it? And people are hopeful for 2022. They saw actually this year as a sign as a sign for optimism because so many
Mhm.
people were running to begin with. I
Oh
think
yes, so many. And we've been doing the forums here and interviews here with them on Team Racine or channel here. So, we've interacted with so many of them during the past year and during this election runoff. So I was even, looking forward to, well, I didn't even know that it had never happened before. So if I had known, then it would have been even more like instrumental in my head, like, hopefully one of them clinches, one of these seats.
right, yeah. I would also like add, so like the various degrees is like people were like, oh, it's financially difficult to like to run for office, and so the city's fair elections program, which gives people like public dollars if they don't agree,
Mhm.
if they agree, excuse me, not to accept PAC money or big corporation dollars. But like money was a barrier of entry. I think even the community kind of coalescing around one candidate and like was a different like just it's hard. Like there are just so many like there are so many factors, and I think the second reason, right? I think while people want to see one of their own elected, they're not no, a big thing was I was speaking to like one prominent union organizer who's Salvadorian, and he was like, I'm not gonna like vote for someone or organize and coalesce around someone just because they're a part of my community, they're part of the Latinx community. That was like a big thing I continued to
Yeah.
hear. I've interviewed so many organizers who helped canvas for Ed Lazier, who was thought of as the big like progressive candidate in the field. He's part of the DC Fiscal Policy
Mhm.
Institute, so he has these like progressive grassroots, like this group, progressive organization that he helped created. And so like that was a big thing. Like it wasn't people while they want to see it happen because they
Yeah.
understand how important representation is. It's they're not no one's gonna just coalesce around someone or just vote for
Just
someone.
because exactly, yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, Amanda, tell me what are you currently working on and what are you looking forward to in 2021?
Yeah. What there's a lot. So I'm always, I'm reporting about, and I kind of mentioned that I was reporting about um like the rippling effects of the coronavirus, but I'm
Yeah.
always tracking like just like DC's like restrictions. And today was something I published something around like outbreak data. I would be remiss if I didn't like plug our newsletter, which I'm responsible for like every single day. And I wrote about like the outbreak data and what that
Mhm.
tells us or what it really doesn't tell us. So I'm like continuing to follow like coronavirus data. I'm continuing to follow housing problems. I mentioned a story that I'm working on that's publishing Thursday, which I'm really excited about. Um, and yeah, that's a little bit. It's all over the place, but yeah.
I love that. So, and how can people follow you and, keep up with you, to, see what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So I'm really big. I tweet a lot, so I would suggest that. My handle is Amanda, but AMANDUH, not my name. Yeah. And I'm
Oh,
yeah. It's an old handlebar. Like I got it when I was like
but
in
I like it. It's cute. No, keep it. Keep
I know. People
it.
like delete their Twitter when they like they delete their like fun Twitter or like their
Uh-uh.
personal Twitter, not their fun, but their personal Twitter, and then they
Uh,
go professional. I was like, all right, I'm gonna keep it. It's all
yeah,
my
I just made my fun Twitter just now just become my bland Twitter because now I'm older. But if you go way back,
I know,
uh,
way back. I'm kidding. But yeah, yeah. So, and then the last is Gomez, and then also I'm like I always check my email, because I respond real quick when you invited me onto this.
yeah,
But so I'm on like my email as well, a Gomez at WashingtonCityPapers.com, and I'm always looking for tips. So I cover a host of things,
awesome.
housing, yeah, schools, a lot. So
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Amanda. And thank you for the work you're doing, keeping us here in the city informed. And most of all, thank you so much for joining me here today. It's been such a pleasure.
thank you for having me so much.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for watching. Bye, everyone.